Good evening, friends. Dim your lights a little if you can. Let the world outside blur into a soft hum, and settle yourself beneath your blanket. Feel the warmth fold around your shoulders like an old cloak found in an attic, familiar and safe. If there's a lamp nearby, lower it until the glow feels like candlelight. Tonight, we'll drift together through the forgotten hours of the medieval night, a time when sleep came not as one long stretch, but as two gentle tides. Breathe in slowly, let your shoulders fall. The day has already done enough of its talking. All that remains is quiet curiosity and the low whisper of stories. And if this calm journey helps you unwind, maybe tap like or subscribe, only if it feels right, of course. This isn't a rush. It's an invitation to rest. Now, imagine with me, the year is 1420. A chill hangs over a small English village. The thatched roofs glisten with frost. Inside, a fire sighs in a stone hearth, shadows dancing across rough wooden walls. Somewhere a dog stirs, then settles again. And across that sleeping land, in hundreds of cottages, something remarkable is happening. People are asleep, yes, but only halfway. For in this world, night is not one long silence. It is two acts in a quiet play. Let me tell you about the first time I stumbled across the idea of first sleep. It was hidden in a dusty old book, bound in cracked leather, smelling faintly of rain and time. The passage was almost casual. After his first sleep, the man rose and prayed. At first, I thought it a poetic phrase, but no, it was literal. People once woke in the middle of the night as naturally as we pour coffee in the morning. Picture it. You drift off soon after dusk. The fire burns low. Hours pass. Then, somewhere near midnight, your eyes open. Not startled, not restless, simply awake. You stretch, listen to the stillness, maybe whisper to the person beside you. This was the watch, the space between first and second sleep. It was a time for prayer, for thought, for quiet talk, and yes, sometimes for snacks. Imagine that scene. A clay bowl of barley broth left near the coals, still warm enough to sip. A crust of bread, tough but comforting, dipped into the stew's faint steam. That, perhaps, was the medieval version of a midnight snack, a sort of 15th century Pop-Tart. The world outside is different too. The moonlight falls pale and thin through the window slats. In the corner, a spindle leans against a stool. Someone might light a small candle, careful not to waste the tallow, and mend a torn sleeve or whisper a few lines of prayer. Children shift under their wool blankets, their dreams paused mid-story. And here's the wonder of it. This wasn't strange to them. This two-part sleep was simply how life was. The word midnight, back then, truly meant the middle of the night, the calm between two gentle oceans of rest. When historians began to uncover old diaries, legal records, and letters, they found countless references. After first sleep, before second sleep. Even Chaucer, the poet who gave us the Canterbury Tales, hints at it in his writings. One scholar noted that peasants, nobles, monks, and merchants alike lived by this rhythm. The fire is low. The stars still shine. Let's walk toward the soft glow of another hearth. The house is nearly silent, save for the faint sigh of the fire and the low hum of the wind pressing softly against the walls. It's the hour when dreams loosen their grip, and waking feels like floating just beneath the surface of a warm lake. The kind of stillness where every small sound matters. The shuffle of a log, the flick of a candle wick, the almost musical drip of melting wax. In those moments, conversation found its truest shape. It wasn't the chatter of daytime markets or the noise of taverns. It was a quieter thing, slower, meant for one or two pairs of ears at most. These were the fireside whispers of the medieval night. Imagine sitting in a small cottage, perhaps in a village tucked along a river. The smell of wood smoke and bread lingers from supper. The hearth has dimmed but still glows with a sleepy orange light. You and a friend or your partner, or even a child too curious to fall fully asleep, lean close, voices barely above a murmur. The talk drifts easily like smoke. Did you hear? Someone might say, that old Matthew saw lights near the mill again? And the other would nod, eyes glimmering. He always sees something when the fog rolls in. It wasn't gossip, not really. It was a way of remembering the world together. Before books were common, before news traveled faster than a horse could gallop, stories were the night's inheritance. Passed from mouth to mouth, they became the music of survival. Farmers told of wolves, sailors of spirits, old women of saints and sinners. The truth hardly mattered, the telling did. And what better time to tell them than between first and second sleep, when even the fire seemed to lean in to listen. In some homes, this became a ritual. The eldest would sit nearest the hearth, back straight, eyes reflecting flame, and begin. The story might start softly, almost like prayer. It is said that once, on a winter night just like this, you can feel that rhythm, can't you? That slow, hypnotic rhythm that draws you closer without raising its voice. The listener doesn't interrupt. They just listen the way you might listen to rain or wind. I like to imagine one such night in a small monastery. The monks lie in their narrow beds, straw rustling beneath their robes. A bell tolls softly, the nocturnes, the midnight prayer. They rise one by one, wrapping their cloaks tight, moving through cold stone corridors lit by flickering lamps. Their sandals whisper on the floor. They chant briefly, voices low, a sound like distant waves. Then they return to sleep, second sleep, until dawn. And while the story unfolds, of kings who vanished, of lovers turned to stone, of stars that fell and became rivers, you might smell something sweet. An apple roasting on the hearth's edge, skin blistered, juice hissing softly as it caramelizes. Someone pokes it with a stick, laughs, and says, "The night's dessert is ready." That's how it was, simple, sensory, shared. Food, warmth, and words woven together until sleep returned like a friend. In monasteries, the fireside whispers took a different form. The monks would gather after prayers, wrapped in robes heavy with candle smoke. Silence was their discipline, but even silence has its whispers. A soft cough, a quiet amen. The turning of parchment pages as one copied the scriptures by hand. The scratching of quill on vellum became the sound of devotion, like rain falling steadily in an empty cloister. Sometimes a novice would speak a question in that midnight half-hour about a dream or about the meaning of a psalm. The elder monk might answer softly, voice deep and slow, like the fire itself speaking, "All things are lessons if you listen in the dark." And in villages far from the monasteries, the faithful did much the same in their own way. They woke between sleeps and prayed by their bedsides, whispering Pater Noster under their breath, the words mixing with the rhythm of the night. But not every whisper was sacred. Some were mischievous. Lovers often used the hours between sleeps for quiet company. The night gave them cover. The stillness gave them courage. The walls of those little homes heard more laughter than the churches ever knew. It's a strange and beautiful truth. Even without clocks or alarms, people always seemed to find time for tenderness. And then there were the healers, the wise women, as some called them, or witches, if you preferred the church's word. They too worked between sleeps. Herbs steeped in clay pots, poultices ground in stone bowls, whispered charms spoken over feverish children. They said certain plants gathered best under moonlight, mugwort for dreams, lavender for calm, rue to ward off spirits. The air in their cottages smelled like medicine and mystery mixed together. Imagine stepping into such a home. Dried flowers hang from the rafters, bundles tied with rough twine. A small cat curls by the hearth. A kettle murmurs over the fire, its steam fragrant with mint and something you can't quite name. The healer stirs slowly, then turns, eyes soft but sharp. "Couldn't sleep?" she might ask, half smiling. "You're not the only one. The night keeps secrets better than the day ever could." And maybe she's right. Maybe that's why those quiet hours held such power. Not because of superstition, but because they were private. A pause in time when no one expected anything from you. You could just exist. Whisper, listen, dream awake. It's strange, isn't it, to think of waking up halfway through the night not as a problem but as part of nature's script? These people didn't battle insomnia. They lived with it rhythmically. The historian A. Roger Kirch once wrote that this watch between sleeps was a time of remarkable intimacy and self-reflection, something our modern world has almost erased. But imagine how that felt. Lying there, the fire a small sun, your thoughts meandering freely without interruption. Maybe that's why people then wrote poetry or prayed or told stories. They had space to simply think. We chase peace now in apps and affirmations, but perhaps peace once lived naturally in those hours between darkness and dawn. Outside, the night continues to hum. A fox yips in the distance. The sky, black velvet at dusk, has turned a deep shade of blue. Frost gathers on the thatch. You can almost taste the air, cold, clean, quiet. Inside, the storyteller's voice has slowed. The last apple has been shared, its sweetness lingering. The children have closed their eyes. Even the fire crackles more softly, as if listening to its own fade. And just before the second sleep begins to settle over the room, there's that one final whisper. Something so gentle it almost isn't sound at all. Maybe a prayer, maybe a sigh, maybe just the world saying goodnight. Hold that image in your mind. The warmth of the fire, the comfort of voices fading into dream. It's the heartbeat of a civilization that knew how to live with the night, not against it. Now, as the embers die and sleep deepens, let's follow them further, to the great halls of monks and scholars who built their nights around sacred rhythm, and to those who believed dreams were messages whispered by the divine. The world outside is so still that you can almost hear snow settling on the roof. Inside, the last of the firelight bends across the floor, painting faint gold lines that tremble with every flicker. You can smell pine resin, old smoke, wool. These are the scents that cradle the night. Far beyond this humble cottage, in the wide countryside, stand the monasteries, stone giants rising from mist and frost. Their bells mark the passing of hours that few in the world remember. Matins, lauds, the divine offices that divided the night like soft breaths. And as you and I drift closer to that image, imagine the sound first. A single bell, hollow and beautiful, echoing through a valley where even the trees seem to bow to the sound. Inside, monks stir from their pallets. They move slowly, carefully, their sandals whispering against cold stone. The corridors smell of tallow, wax, and ink. Torches sputter, their flames small but steady. The abbot nods once, and the chanting begins. Some say this pattern was born of necessity. Without electric light, the night stretched long, especially in winter. A person might spend 14 hours in darkness. Dividing it made sense. A first rest to recover from the day, a waking interlude for reflection or quiet work, and then a second sleep to carry one into morning. It's not music meant for performance. It's closer to breathing than to song. The Latin words rise and fall like waves, echoing off walls that have heard the same prayers for centuries.
Domine, labia mea peries.
Lord, open my lips. The sound fills the darkness until it feels almost physical, wrapping around every soul like warm cloth. This is the holy version of our fireside whisper. Not stories of villagers or healers, but of the eternal, of dreams that reach toward heaven. And if you listen long enough, you realize that even prayer has its rhythm. A slow pulse that matches the body's half-sleep. One monk, a young one perhaps, glances toward the high windows. He sees the moon through the stained glass, pale and perfect. He thinks, for just a moment, of his home. The smell of bread, his mother's hands, the laughter of his brothers. Then the chant brings him back, and he lets the memory float away like incense smoke. After prayers, they return to their beds for the second sleep, but their minds are quiet. This pause between sleeps is sacred, the closest thing to stillness one can know. Meanwhile, in villages beyond the monastery walls, the fireside whispers continue in their own form. People talk of dreams. The medieval world believed dreams were not random but messages, the soul's conversation with something greater. Dream interpreters were common then, people who claimed to understand the language of the sleeping mind. One such man, in 1435, wrote that if you dreamed of running water between sleeps, it meant change. If you dreamed of fire, it meant passion. If you dreamed of light, it meant divine favor. Imagine what comfort that brought to someone waking in the dark, to believe their mind was a place where God might speak softly. Dreams held power. Kings recorded them, monks studied them, lovers whispered them like secrets. Some even performed small rituals before the second sleep, washing hands in cool water or placing herbs under the pillow to invite good visions. The most common herb was mugwort, said to open the gates of dream. It's easy to see how this belief shaped their nights. To them, sleep was an escape. It was communion. The first sleep rested the body, the second spoke to the soul. And the space in between, that delicate middle world, was where the two might meet. Picture again our small cottage, where the storyteller's voice has faded and all is quiet except the hum of the fire. A woman lies awake, eyes half open, the rhythm of her breath soft and even. She's not anxious. She's waiting. She hopes that when she falls asleep again, she'll dream of her husband, gone these many months on the road. She's left a small token under her pillow, a coin he once gave her, believing that love might travel along the same roads as dreams. And perhaps in some strange way it does. Others think it ran deeper, tied to the very biology of our ancestors. When the day faded, their bodies followed the rhythm of firelight and stars. Melatonin rose early, drawing them into the first slumber, and as the deepest darkness passed, it ebbed slightly, nudging them awake. By dawn, the hormone rose again, calling them gently back into dreams. Outside, the night thickens. The sky is powdered with stars, so bright they make the frost glitter. In a field beyond the village, a shepherd sits wrapped in his cloak. He's been awake since his first sleep, listening to the bleating of his sheep, the occasional crack of ice. He hums softly to himself, not out of loneliness, but because song keeps the cold away. When he looks up, he thinks of the monk's chants echoing from the abbey miles away, and for a moment, the shepherd and the holy men are joined. Two whispers in the same endless dark. The medieval night was full of these quiet parallels. The poor and the pious, the farmer and the scholar, the lover and the monk, all sharing the same rhythm without knowing it. And it's that rhythm that holds the key to something we've lost. Think of how we sleep now. One long stretch if we're lucky, interrupted by alarms, surrounded by light that never dies. The night is no longer a friend but an obstacle. We forget that darkness was once a teacher, a listener, a healer, that silence could cradle the mind instead of haunting it. But back then, the night had texture. There were layers to it. Stories, prayers, dreams, laughter, and work. A world that breathed slowly, like a living creature. You can almost feel that heartbeat, can't you? The steady inhale and exhale of a civilization at rest with itself. If you lean close, you can hear the fire crackle again. The monk's chant fades. The woman drifts into her second sleep, dreaming of warm hands and the smell of hay. The shepherd nods off, his flock quiet. Somewhere, a rooster calls too early. The world turns toward dawn. This, then, is what the medieval night sounded like, not silence but harmony. Countless small lives moving to the same gentle pulse. And as we prepare to leave these fireside whispers behind, let the warmth of their world stay with you. That blend of voices, the scent of wood smoke, the comfort of knowing that every soul around you, from cottage to cathedral, was doing the same. Waking, thinking, dreaming, and resting in rhythm with the stars. Now, the first pale light of morning seeps into the horizon. But our story doesn't end here. The night still has lessons to teach, about faith, about time, about the mystery of dreams themselves. I find that thought comforting, that our ancestors' nights were shaped by the same moon and body clocks that still hum inside us. We are, perhaps, creatures of the divided night still, only now surrounded by glowing screens instead of flickering fires. So as we walk from the hearth into the shadowed corridors of ancient belief, listen for the faint toll of a bell. It calls us toward the next chapter, where sleep and spirit meet, where dreams are treated as messages from beyond. The year is somewhere in the late 14th century. The village sleeps, the dogs are curled tight against the cold, and the only sound beyond the walls is the wind sliding through bare branches. Far on a hill, a bell begins to toll. One note, then another, each spaced like breaths. It is the hour of matins, the first of the divine offices. Inside the abbey, monks rise from their straw mattresses. No one speaks. They dress by memory, wool over linen, rope around the waist, then file silently toward the chapel. The corridor glows faintly from torches set in iron rings, and the air smells of stone and smoke and candle grease. Their sandals whisper as they walk. The chapel doors open and the night air drifts in, cool and sharp. The moon pours silver through narrow windows. Candles are lit one by one, tiny suns flickering in the dark. A single voice begins the chant.
Domine, labia me aperies.
Lord, open my lips. The sound grows slowly, layer by layer, until it fills the space without breaking its stillness. Latin syllables rise and fall like waves, echoing off the vaulted ceiling. If you close your eyes, you can almost feel the vibration move through your ribs. This is prayer as breathing. And while they sing, the rest of the world dreams. Somewhere beyond the abbey walls, in cottages and castles, men and women lie within their second sleep, minds adrift in visions they believe come from heaven. For to the people of this age, dreams are not imagination, they are communication. The night is God's ink, and sleep his page. A farmer's wife may dream of a field glowing green despite winter frost. She wakes certain that spring will come early, and she sows her seeds with new faith. A knight may dream of his old horse crossing a river alone. He wakes the next day and decides not to ride into battle. Dreams are advice, warning, sometimes prophecy. And though the scholars debate their meaning, the people need no convincing. Inside the abbey, one monk lingers after prayers. His name is Brother Laurent. He writes by the faint light of a single candle, his quill scratching like an insect against the parchment. He keeps a small notebook hidden under his robe, a book of dreams. In it he records visions told to him in confession, those too strange or sacred to forget. A child spoke of a garden of stars. A fisherman saw a great whale made of light. A woman dreamed that bread fell from heaven and melted into wine. Let your imagination linger on that firelight for a moment. Hear the soft pop of resin in the logs. See how shadows stretch and shrink across the walls. Someone outside crunches through frost toward the well. Maybe a farmer checking his animals, his breath silver in the cold. Somewhere else, a mother hums softly as she rocks a drowsy child, the tune barely more than a whisper. Laurent believes that sleep is not merely rest but a door. He writes, "The soul, unburdened by the weight of flesh, walks freely in the hours after midnight." And perhaps he's right. Even now, centuries later, science admits that our dreaming mind is wiser than we think. Back in the village, a candle flickers in a small window. A midwife sits awake between her two sleeps, listening to the distant bells. She cannot read, but she knows the hours by sound. "That's the monks," she whispers to her cat. "They're telling God the time." She smiles at the thought. Outside, frost creeps across the glass like lace. Dreams were a kind of currency then, traded like news. In the morning, people gathered near the well or the oven to share what they had seen. One would say, "I dreamed of a ship full of apples," and another might laugh, "Then a traveler will arrive with goods today." It was half superstition, half comfort, a way of making meaning from the mystery of sleep. Even kings took dreams seriously. Henry I of England once delayed a campaign because his astrologer warned that his dream of falling stars was an omen. And when the Great Plague swept Europe, many claimed they had dreamed of black clouds weeks before the sickness came. Yet for all their fear, there was tenderness in their belief. To dream was to be visited. It meant the night cared enough to speak. Imagine lying there, wrapped in rough wool, hearing the echo of the monks chant through the cold air, and thinking, maybe the same God who listens to them is shaping my dreams right now. The thought alone could make sleep sweeter. Sometimes, before returning to bed after their midnight waking, people prayed for certain dreams. They'd whisper, "Show me my mother," or "Let me see tomorrow's weather," or simply, "Keep me safe till dawn." Then they'd close their eyes and drift into the second sleep, trusting that the dark would answer in its own way. We might call that naive now, but listen closely to the rhythm of it. It's the same rhythm we chase today when we make wishes before sleep or whisper hopes into the dark. We've only changed the language. Outside the monastery, the sky deepens toward its coldest hour. The chant fades, the bells fall silent, and Brother Laurent snuffs his candle. The room returns to black. For a moment he lies awake, watching the moonlight crawl across the floor like a pale hand. Then he closes his eyes and feels himself slipping away, back into the current of dream where perhaps, just perhaps, he will meet the things he has written about. Meanwhile, the villagers dream too. The baker of rising loaves, the shepherd of endless fields, the healer of herbs that never wilt. The night holds them all, a vast cradle rocking gently until the first blush of dawn. There's something deeply human in these small midnights, the way they belong to no one and everyone at once. Think about it. Half the world today lies awake at odd hours, scrolling or staring at ceilings, wondering what's wrong. But maybe nothing is wrong. Maybe that old rhythm still stirs in us, asking to be remembered. And when morning finally arrives, when the first rooster crows and the frost begins to steam off the thatch, there's a moment, brief but pure, where the entire world seems to inhale together. A new day, born from two sleeps, bound by one silence. Hold that image. The monks at prayer, the villagers dreaming, the world itself suspended between breath and light. The divine hours are ending, but their echo lingers in every heartbeat. Now, as we step out of the abbey and into the first glow of dawn, the bells fade behind us, but their rhythm stays like a pulse under the surface of time. The first pale line of dawn hides still below the hills, and in this gray hour the world seems to belong to neither night nor morning. It's the hour when the mind still half dreams even as the body stirs. You can hear it, the hush before birds, the faint creak of wood as houses stretch awake. But before light truly returns, there is one more realm to visit, the one where dreams walk with open eyes. In the villages, dreams were daily language. People spoke of them the way we talk about weather. At the market, a woman might say, "I dreamed of running water," and her neighbor would nod gravely, "Then your daughter will soon travel." No one laughed. Dreams were part of conversation like bread and salt. A farmer might recall that his ox appeared sick in a dream. He'd check the animal in the morning and find it limping. To him, that was proof enough. The invisible world was simply another layer of life, thin as mist but just as real. Children too were taught to listen. Mothers would tell them, "Remember your dreams before you touch the floor." For in those first moments after waking, it was said, the dream still clung to the soul like dew to grass. If you spoke it then, it might come true. If you forgot, it was lost forever. The medieval mind wasn't split between logic and magic the way ours is. Faith and reason slept in the same bed. A priest could bless the harvest at dawn and still warn against sleeping with rosemary under the pillow, lest the devil visit in disguise. The line between science and superstition was soft and blurred, like candlelight seen through smoke. Yet there was wisdom in it too. They understood that the night had its own truth, one you couldn't measure but could feel. When they dreamed, they didn't dismiss it as nonsense. They listened, they interpreted, they adapted their lives to what the dark had whispered. The poet Thomas Browne once called sleep a death of the senses, yet a waking of the soul. In that quiet between sleeps, people often wrote of vivid dreams, strange clarity, even insights they swore came from beyond. Farmers would recall forgotten chores, lovers whispered secrets, priests claimed to receive visions, all in that calm valley between two dreams. Let's return for a moment to Brother Laurent, the monk who kept his secret book of dreams. Weeks after the night we last saw him, he writes of a vision he had. A staircase spiraling upward into clouds, each step carved with a name. He dreamed that he climbed halfway, then stopped, unable to read the next name. The next morning, he wrote, "Perhaps we are meant to know only part of the climb." He never called it prophecy. He called it guidance. That humility, that acceptance of mystery was something common then. People didn't need to solve their dreams. They just lived with them, like weather that passed through the soul. And maybe, in that way, they slept better than we do. Today, we analyze everything. We dissect meaning until it dies beneath our fingers. But the medieval sleeper didn't worry whether a dream was true. They only asked if it felt true. And if it did, they carried it quietly through the day like a charm in their pocket. In that sense, dreams were a form of prayer. They were the unspoken dialogue between heart and heaven. And sometimes they changed history. In 1366, a French nun named Marguerite wrote that she dreamed of Christ handing her a loaf of bread and saying, "Feed those who hunger for light." When she woke, she began writing letters to local priests, urging them to teach reading to poor children. Her small vision grew into one of the first recorded movements for public education in her region. Dreams shaping action that was not unusual. One could say the medieval world was built on the belief that the unseen mattered. But as centuries turned, light began to conquer darkness, literally and figuratively. Oil lamps became cheaper, then candles, then the first faint glow of street lanterns. The night grew shorter, and with every new flame, the old mysteries retreated a little further. By the 17th century, people began to sleep differently. The long stretch of darkness that once allowed 2 sleeps began to vanish. Cities buzzed later, workers rose earlier. The divine hours were broken into schedules, and the sacred quiet between dreams faded beneath the ticking of new clocks. And in a way that might explain why so many folk tales, ghost stories, and divine visitations begin around midnight. The mind half awake, half asleep, a door ajar between worlds. Dreams themselves changed too. With less darkness came less remembering, and so the night lost some of its voice. Still, in the countryside, the old rhythm lingered. Farmers in the north of England were recorded as keeping the 2-sleep pattern well into the 1800s. They still woke between midnight and dawn to smoke a pipe, check the fire, whisper to their animals. And some still prayed for dreams. But by then, it was nostalgia, a faint echo of something ancient, already slipping from memory. It makes you wonder how many truths we've traded away in the name of progress. How many small, natural miracles we've buried under light. Perhaps that's why some of us still wake in the dark for no reason at all. Maybe our bodies remember. Maybe something inside still expects the pause, that gentle breathing space between 2 sleeps. So the next time you open your eyes in the quiet hours before dawn, try to see it differently. Don't call it sleeplessness. Call it the divine hour. The watch, the whisper. Let your mind wander softly, unafraid. Maybe even make a wish. The old world believed the night still listens. Outside now, the sun has begun to stir. The frost melts from rooftops. Bells ring again, not for matins but for morning mass. The monks rise, the villagers stretch, and all across the land, the dreams of the night fade into steam and breath. The divine hours have passed, but their peace remains. And as we leave that sacred quiet behind, we step toward something new. The dawn of industry, the hum of light, and the slow forgetting of the 2-sleep world. The rhythm that once ruled our nights begins to falter, replaced by clocks, coffee, and the ceaseless glow of human invention. Let's walk gently into that next world, where the night grows shorter, but the soul, perhaps, grows lonelier. Dawn arrives not as a color but as a feeling, the quiet relief that darkness has lifted. The first birds begin their gentle chatter, the fire turns to ash, and in the distance, a hammer strikes metal. The medieval night has ended. The age of light is beginning. Take another breath, slow and deep. Imagine lying there, candle stub flickering, the house still except for the wind through the eaves. You know you'll sleep again soon, but not yet. You have time. Time to sit with your thoughts, time to simply be. It started innocently enough. Candle here, an oil lamp there. Wealthy merchants discovered they could turn night into day if they wished. And soon the glow of tallow and flame became a symbol of prosperity. To sleep less was to live more, or so they thought. By the 17th century, the rhythm of 2 sleeps was already beginning to fade in the cities. Street lamps appeared along narrow alleys. Taverns stayed open later. Shops began to serve evening customers. and the humble hours between sleeps grew shorter. The night was no longer silent. It hummed with new life. Imagine walking through one of those early cities, London perhaps or Paris after midnight. The streets, once black as ink, now flicker with pale orange light. Lanterns swing from iron hooks. A baker pulls fresh bread from his oven. A coach rattles past, hooves clattering on cobblestones. Music drifts faintly from a tavern door. The world feels alive, but also restless. Inside, in small rooms above these streets, people toss and turn. The body, confused by the artificial glow, doesn't know when to rest. The first sleep shortens, the second never fully comes. And yet, no one realizes what's being lost. The invention of light changed more than visibility. It changed time itself. For the first time, humans could decide when the day ended. Darkness had always been a kind of guardian, forcing rest, enforcing quiet, but with every new flame, that guardian retreated. One writer in 1697 complained that the good people of the city sleep less and less, as though the moon were now but a candle to mock the sun. He wasn't wrong. The average night, once divided into two halves, was shrinking into a single stretch of restless slumber. And as light conquered the night, clocks conquered the mind. Before, people measured time by bells or stars or instinct. They rose when the sun rose, rested when it set. Now the ticking of gears marked their hours. Churches, workshops, and ships all synchronized their bells. A new rhythm replaced the old mechanical, precise, unyielding. It must have felt strange, that first generation to live by clock instead of candle. To know the exact minute, yet feel the loss of something timeless. Picture a merchant closing his shop just before midnight, glancing at the pocket watch he carries like a talisman. He hurries home, tired but wired, his thoughts still busy with numbers and ledgers. He climbs into bed, stares at the ceiling, waits for sleep that does not come. And when it finally does, it comes in one heavy block. No gentle waking, no soft watch in between. Just exhaustion. There's a serenity to that idea, isn't there? A permission to wake and rest within the same night. No alarm clock scolding you, no guilt of broken sleep, just the natural pulse of darkness. The world calls this progress, but the night, if it could speak, might call it grief. In the countryside, the change comes slower. Farmers still rise before dawn, still keep candles sparingly, still let the darkness dictate their pace. But even there, the new rhythm creeps in. Railways demand schedules. Factory whistles split the silence. The stars grow fainter behind the smoke. For thousands of years, the night had been our companion. Now it became a backdrop, something to push through, something to light, to use, to overcome. Humanity, once part of nature's cycle, began to step outside of it. And yet, the body did not forget. Doctors in the 18th century began to note a strange new illness: sleeplessness. People complained of lying awake for hours, mind buzzing, heart unsettled. The mind, wrote one physician in 1732, hath grown too active to rest. Isn't that haunting? The first record of insomnia appears right after we abandoned the old way of sleeping. The more we lit the darker our dreams became. Still, there were some who resisted. Rural communities clung to their two-sleep habits well into the 19th century. Travelers' diaries tell of farmers rising at midnight to smoke a pipe, say a prayer, or check the livestock before returning to bed. They did not call it strange, only natural. One old man in Yorkshire told an interviewer in 1859, "I've always waked in the middle of the night as my father did, and his before him. It's a quiet time, I like it. The world seems nearer then. The world seems nearer then." What a gentle phrase. Imagine that feeling. Standing in your yard under a black sky dusted with stars, hearing only the wind and the low breath of animals. The night presses close, but not in fear, in familiarity. It's the same darkness that wrapped your ancestors, the same that guided sailors, monks, and dreamers. A darkness that meant safety, rhythm, rest. But the cities had no such quiet. By the late 19th century, factories glowed through the night. Workers labored in shifts under gaslight. The old two-sleep pattern fractured completely. The watch became the working man's misery, the graveyard shift. The sacred middle hours turned industrial. In one 17th century medical manual, I remember reading advice that sounds strangely modern. If one wakes in the night, lie still, think soft thoughts, and let the body find its rest again. Imagine sleep hygiene centuries before smartphones. Think of how strange that must have been, to take the most peaceful time of the night and fill it with noise and smoke. The hum of machines replaced the hum of crickets. The bell that once called monks to prayer now called workers to toil. And in that transformation, something deep within us began to ache, though we didn't have words for it. Even today, scientists note how our natural rhythms rebel against the constant light. Our bodies still release melatonin in two waves, as if remembering the first and second sleeps. Yet we fight it with caffeine, screens, alarms. We call it fixing our schedule. But maybe we're only fighting our own design. The night, in the old days, belonged to rest, reflection, and small communion with the soul. Now it belongs to productivity, distraction, and sleepless glow. We traded mystery for control, dreams for deadlines. And still, deep inside, the memory flickers, like an ember beneath ash. Some nights you wake for no reason. The clock says 2 or 3. You think you're restless. But maybe, just maybe, you're ancient. Maybe it's not anxiety, maybe it's ancestry. The whisper of the body saying, "It's the watch again. Be still. The world is listening." Now, outside your window, imagine the slow brightening of the horizon. The industrial city stirs. Smoke rises in threads. Wheels begin to turn. The night has done its duty and steps aside for the age of light. But as we walk out of this fading darkness, let's carry one last thought. What if the things we call progress have simply taught us to forget the ways we once belonged to the world? Morning arrives now not with birdsong or bells, but with the hiss of steam and the clang of metal. The 19th century opens its eyes to smoke, engines, and the bright, endless promise of electricity. The world that once moved by candlelight now pulses with a new heartbeat. Mechanical, loud, relentless. In cities, the streets never truly darken anymore. Gas lamps line the boulevards, glowing even after midnight. Shopkeepers stay open late to catch the evening crowd, and people stroll under the lights as though night itself had been tamed. For the first time in human history, darkness is no longer absolute. And so the first half of the night would give way to that soft intermission. The fire would be stoked again, perhaps a few embers nudged with iron tongs. A thin ribbon of smoke curled up the chimney. Someone might pour a sip of ale or warmed milk. In cities, night watchmen passed by with lanterns, calling the hour, "Past 12, and all is well," their voices echoing through narrow lanes. But taming something ancient always comes at a price. Doctors begin to notice a strange new weariness spreading among city dwellers. Excessive wakefulness, they call it. People work longer, sleep shorter, and when they do sleep, it comes in one unbroken, dreamless block. The old rhythm of 2 sleeps, that soft rise and fall like tides, vanishes under the noise of progress. Picture an apartment above a gaslit street. The window glows orange. The curtains flutter from a passing carriage. Inside, a man in a waistcoat sits at a desk, writing by lamplight. The clock strikes 1. He rubs his eyes, keeps writing. He tells himself he's making use of the night, but his body disagrees. His shoulders ache, his thoughts grow cloudy, and when he finally stumbles to bed near dawn, he sleeps as though dropped from a height, heavy, dreamless, drained. The poets of that era begin to notice too. They write about sleeplessness, about nights that feel crowded with thought but empty of wonder. Charles Dickens walked the streets of London for hours when he couldn't sleep, marveling and mourning at the same time. The quiet beauty of gaslight, the loneliness of a city that never rests. The second sleep disappears first from the cities, then from the countryside. Farmers now wake before dawn to meet the demands of markets and machines. The middle hours of night, once a pause for thought or prayer, are filled instead with fatigue. The world measures life not in seasons or sunlight, but in hours worked. Electric light arrives next, flickering blue-white into homes and factories. With it, the night finally surrenders. No longer mysterious, no longer sacred, it becomes just another shift of the day. The watchmen, the bakers, the monks, all swallowed by a single ceaseless schedule. But deep inside, something resists. The body keeps whispering the old language. Scientists of the early 20th century noticed that when volunteers live without artificial light, their sleep divides again, naturally, into two halves. The ancient rhythm refuses to die. It's humbling, isn't it? Even surrounded by machines and neon, our biology still remembers the moon. Imagine a factory at the edge of a city in 1910. Inside, the machines pound like drums, and workers move in patterns of smoke and sweat. Outside, snow falls gently, muffling the world. If one of those workers steps out for air at midnight, they might look up, just for a moment, and see the stars glittering faintly between chimneys. That moment of stillness, that single deep breath, is all that remains of the watch. The body knows it. The soul sighs with recognition. Then the whistle blows and the worker goes back inside. By the mid-20th century, sleep has become a commodity, something to schedule, something to fix. The two-sleep pattern, once universal, is forgotten entirely. Doctors now call it segmented sleep, as though it were an anomaly instead of our oldest inheritance. You could almost hear it, couldn't you? That slow reassurance in the darkness. But not everyone forgets. Anthropologists studying remote villages in Africa and South America find the same rhythm still alive. People sleeping in two halves, waking at midnight to pray, to talk, to sit quietly under the stars. These communities, untouched by industrial light, live in tune with the same clock that guided our ancestors. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, whether progress has truly made us freer or just brighter and busier. In modern cities, light pours from every window, every screen, every billboard. The night sky, once a cathedral of stars, is drowned in neon. And still, we say we cannot sleep. We try melatonin, lavender tea, sound machines, white noise. Anything to chase the rest that once came naturally in darkness. Perhaps it isn't rest we've lost, but rhythm. The night was never meant to be conquered. It was meant to cradle. The long pause between first and second sleep gave the mind a place to rest awake, to think without noise, to dream without pressure. Without that pause, the mind never truly empties. It only runs until it collapses. Think of how different the world might feel if we still honored that middle time. If, when you woke at 2 in the morning, you didn't reach for your phone or worry about the clock. If instead you lit a small candle, made tea, and listened to the hush, that ancient hour whispering, you are safe, you are supposed to be awake, the second sleep will come soon. There's a strange comfort in that thought. It means that even our restlessness belongs to history, that sleeplessness itself might be memory. Outside, the modern world continues its hum. Cars, lights, voices, all refusing to fade. But under the noise, if you listen carefully, the old rhythm still murmurs. A pulse beneath the pavement, steady as the stars. Because the truth is, the night never stopped speaking. We just forgot how to listen. So tonight, if you wake and find yourself staring at the ceiling, don't scold yourself. Don't count minutes or sigh at the clock. Just breathe. Imagine the centuries of sleepers before you, all stirring in the dark, all sharing the same quiet watch. Let that thought soothe you. You are part of a lineage of dreamers. Now, as the night deepens toward its second half, the body begins to crave rest again. People would return to bed, sometimes murmuring a short prayer for dreams free of devils. For even in calmness, superstition never slept. Blankets drawn tight, the fire dimmed once more, they would sink into second sleep, often the deeper, more vivid one. And as the world outside glows brighter, the ember of that ancient night still burns, faint but alive. Now, let's carry that ember forward, into the world that fully forgot it. The modern age, where light drowned the stars, but the soul still longs for the dark. The present day hums, doesn't it? Even at midnight, there's movement. A car in the distance, the buzz of a refrigerator, the soft pulse of electronics. Light leaks through curtains, turning the dark into a gentle imitation of day. We live inside the glow now, always slightly awake, never fully resting. But if you've ever found yourself staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., not anxious but simply awake, you've already brushed against history. What the world calls insomnia might just be the body remembering, the echo of the divided night. Imagine, for a moment, turning everything off.
No screens. No buzzing lights.
Just you and the slow rhythm of your own breath. In that quiet, your mind might wander in the same way it did for medieval sleepers. Unhurried, curious, calm. Thoughts come and go like embers in a dying fire. You might think of an old friend, a scent from childhood, or a small wish you never spoke aloud. That is the watch returned, a pause not of problem but of permission. Scientists studying people deprived of artificial light have found something extraordinary. When humans live in true darkness again, their sleep naturally divides. They go to bed early, wake around midnight for 1 or 2 peaceful hours, then fall back asleep until morning. Their minds report feeling clearer, calmer. Their dreams grow richer. It's as though the body sighs, "Ah, so this is what I was made for." We've spent centuries calling it broken sleep, but perhaps it was the original rhythm of rest. And what a rhythm it was: generous, forgiving, attuned to the slow beat of nature. It left room for reflection, for small wonders. The old world knew that the middle of the night was not empty. It was full of thought, prayer, story, love. The hum of the modern world has drowned much of that. Yet still, deep within, the old current flows. I like to think of that moment, the return to slumber, as the soul exhaling. The stars still turning above, the cockerel still silent, the heart slowing, the mind softening into dream. And if you listen closely, maybe you can hear that rhythm echoing faintly within your own night. Think of a nurse in a hospital at 3 a.m., sitting in the break room, sipping coffee from a paper cup. The hallways are quiet except for the distant beeping of machines. She looks out the window at the empty street, the amber glow of streetlights, and for a brief second she feels it, that ancient peace, the world held still between 2 breaths. Or imagine someone working late in a city apartment, laptop open, eyes tired. They close the lid, sigh, and turn off the light. The city noise fades, and there it is, the hum beneath silence, the weightless calm that once cradled monks and shepherds alike. Even now, when the night has been conquered, it keeps its secret pockets of stillness. Airports at 4 a.m. where time feels suspended. Quiet kitchens where someone boils water just because they can't sleep. Dim bedrooms where thoughts wander kindly, without fear. All of it echoes that lost ritual, the human heart remembering its 2 halves of rest. Some people have begun to reclaim it, though they might not know its name. They call it polyphasic sleep, or midnight meditation, or the art of slow waking. They don't realize they are reaching back across centuries, joining hands with ancestors who sat beside their fires whispering stories to the dark. And perhaps that's the secret the night has been trying to tell us all along, that we don't need to fix sleep. We only need to make room for it. If you try it someday, you might find it happens naturally. Go to bed a little earlier, wake without panic when your eyes open in the small hours. Light a candle, sit quietly, breathe, maybe write a few lines, or read, or pray, or simply listen. The second sleep will come on its own. The body knows the way back. It's strange to think that after all our inventions, our discoveries, our desperate search for better rest, the cure might be the simplest thing: darkness, quiet, and trust. Outside, the city sky glows faint orange from the reflection of millions of lights. Yet beyond that veil, the stars still wait, patient as ever. They've watched this entire story, from the firelit huts to the neon streets, and they've never changed their rhythm. 2 sleeps, 2 tides, 2 breaths of night. When you look up at them, even through the haze, you join every human who has ever lived through that ancient cycle. You become both present and timeless. The echo of the divided night isn't gone. It's inside you every time you wake and feel the calm of darkness instead of fear. It's in the heartbeat that slows when you stop scrolling and just listen. It's in the faint, instinctive thought that maybe the night isn't an obstacle at all. Maybe it's home. Because even now, When you wake at 2 or 3 in the morning, perhaps it isn't your anxiety calling. Maybe it's history, reminding you of the way we once slept, in 2 gentle acts beneath 1 long sky. So tonight, if you find yourself awake again, try this. Don't reach for the clock. Don't calculate the hours left before morning. Just breathe and whisper, "This is my watch." Let your mind drift like it used to centuries ago. Unhurried, safe, full of gentle curiosity. You may feel, for the first time in a long while, that the night is on your side. Now, let the hum of modern life fade a little further. We'll take one last walk, through memory, through silence, through the edge of dawn, and see what remains when the world finally remembers how to rest. The night is thinning. Outside, the horizon carries a faint silver edge, the first promise of dawn. You can almost hear it before you see it. A bird testing its voice, a cart creaking far away, the slow awakening of the world. But inside this calm space, time still moves slowly. The last candle has burned low, leaving the air warm and sweet with wax. The blanket is heavy, the air cool against your skin. For a little longer, you belong to the dark. The strange, isn't it, how the world keeps changing while our hearts stay ancient? We build cities, split atoms, send machines into the stars, and still the smallest part of us longs for the hush of a firelit room, the soft rhythm of 2 sleeps. Progress can't erase memory, not the kind that lives in the bones. If you listen closely, you might feel that memory stirring now. It hums beneath the surface of your thoughts, a reminder that you are older than clocks, older than light bulbs, older than the noise that fills the night. You were made for this silence. There is something healing in remembering it. Perhaps the people of the Middle Ages, for all their hardship, knew a secret we've forgotten. That life wasn't meant to be a straight line from sunrise to sunset. It was a circle. Rest, wake, dream, rest again. The pause between sleeps wasn't lost time. It was a space for the soul to breathe. Imagine bringing that back, even just a little. A world that honors slowness. A night that doesn't demand performance. Maybe you wake and don't reach for the glow of a screen. Maybe you sit up, take a sip of water, whisper a thought into the quiet. Maybe you thank the dark for waiting for you. And as we leave that warm cottage behind, the embers glowing low, let your mind wander to what came next. The strange, secret hours between first and second sleep, when the world was half awake and full of small wonders. You see, the old rhythm was never truly about sleep. It was about balance, the gentle understanding that waking and dreaming need each other. One teaches, the other heals. And between them lies the watch, the still hour where the world is soft enough to hold both. The historian Kirch once wrote that in rediscovering our 2 sleeps, we might rediscover ourselves. Because in that rhythm, humanity lived without hurry. The night wasn't a void to escape. It was a companion. Even now, every creature around you remembers. The birds doze in intervals. Cats nap and wake in quiet loops. The ocean moves in tides. The moon waxes and wanes. Everything in nature sleeps in waves. You are part of that same pattern. Let that truth settle somewhere deep inside you, not as knowledge, but as comfort. You are not broken for waking in the night. You are simply old in the best way. The fire from our first chapter has long since gone out, but its warmth remains. You can still see it if you close your eyes. The orange glow on wooden walls, the smell of smoke and bread, the distant sound of a monk's bell, the murmur of lovers whispering between dreams. Every image we pass through tonight is still flickering somewhere in your mind, gentle as candlelight. And perhaps, in your next waking, when the world feels too loud, you'll remember this journey. You'll remember that once upon a time, night was a friend. You'll remember that the dark holds stories, that silence holds wisdom, and that rest doesn't have to mean escape, can mean return. Outside now, the sky is turning pale gold. The fields shine with dew, the rooftops glisten, and the air smells faintly of earth and morning. The second sleep is ending, the day waiting patiently at the door. Take one last breath. Feel the weight of the night lift, slowly, tenderly. The fire, the chants, the dreams. All fade into light, but none of it is lost. They live quietly in you now, ready to return whenever you need them. And as you drift, you might hear a whisper, not from me, but from the night itself, saying, "Rest well. I'll be here when you wake again." May these memories guide you into peaceful dreams. The fire has burned low now. Only the faintest orange glows under the blackened wood. And when you move your hand toward it, you can feel that delicate warmth, like the ghost of the day still breathing through the night. You shift slightly, the straw mattress sighs, and for a moment everything is still except the heartbeat of the house. The slow tick of cooling timber, the gentle drip of melted wax, and the faraway song of an owl hunting somewhere beyond the trees. And if you drifted off somewhere along the way, let me know below. Sweet dreams, dear traveler. Good night, from History for Sleep. Crescent Moon. This, my friend, is where the first sleep ends. And it is here that the world feels both alive and asleep at once. The air is cool enough to make you draw the blanket higher, but not unpleasant. Your mind hovers between waking and dreaming, floating through the dim room. You can hear faint movement, a neighbor stirring, a baby's muffled cry from the next cottage, the rhythmic breath of your dog curled by the hearth. In this silence, people of old found a kind of calm that feels almost holy. Historians call this moment the watch. It usually came between midnight and 2, depending on the season. But they didn't think of it as insomnia. Oh no, it was opportunity. The kind of hour that lends itself to whispering, to thinking without urgency, to living without time. I like to picture a baker, somewhere in the heart of a small medieval town, roused by the inner clock of habit. His first sleep finished, he pulls on his rough linen tunic and steps outside. The street smells of damp stone and ash. Above, the sky spills stars like crushed salt. He walks to his shop, pushes open the wooden door, and begins kneading dough by candlelight. The rest of the world still dreams, and yet the future breakfast is already being born under his hands. Sometimes others would wake too, not because they had to, but because the stillness itself invited them. A farmer might mend a harness. A mother might nurse her child. Lovers might meet in quiet corners, sharing stolen hours between darknesses. Imagine that, romance not in candlelit dinners, but in the hush of midnight when even the wind dares not interrupt. There's an intimacy to these hours that feels almost too delicate for daylight. You can think more clearly, feel more deeply. And if you've ever woken in the night and found your thoughts strangely sharper than at noon, you've brushed against that ancient rhythm too. In some parts of Europe, they called it the dorval, the waking sleep. People would tell stories, pray softly, or even visit neighbors. Yes, imagine it. Knocking quietly on a door after midnight, not out of fear or need, but because you knew your friend was likely awake too. Inside, a candle flickers, 2 mugs of ale are poured, and the night becomes a small, secret world of its own. The idea might sound strange now, but perhaps not entirely unfamiliar. We, too, have our midnight rituals. Scrolling glowing screens, reaching for water, whispering to someone beside us. We just replaced firelight with blue light. Back then, that middle hour could be deeply spiritual. Priests recommended prayers between sleeps, believing the soul most receptive in that fragile quiet. In some writings, you'll find lines like, "Rise in the middle of the night, for it is when God listens most closely." Whether one believed that or not, the habit turned ordinary nights into small acts of reflection. And when they prayed slowly, whispered verses carried softly into the smoke-thick air. The rhythm of Latin psalms, the creak of old pews, the faint ring of iron bells from far monasteries drifting through mist. A world half dreaming, half awake. If you imagine the smell of that hour, it would be smoke and wool, cold air and bread. Because often, someone would be warming a little food. The simplest of things. A bit of salted meat, a handful of nuts, maybe even a sweet treat of dried figs or honey spread on coarse bread. Picture dipping it into a wooden cup of warm ale or milk, the sweetness sticking to your fingers. The closest thing to a medieval midnight snack. You'd chew slowly, hearing every crackle from the fire, feeling every sound of the sleeping house. And perhaps, if you were lucky, you'd have company. Cat would nuzzle your leg. Someone beside you might murmur, "Still awake?" And you'd both laugh quietly, as if caught in a secret the world had forgotten. Now, outside the cottage, the stars are sharp and cold. No streetlights, no car engines. Only the long breath of the wind moving through trees. The moon spills silver onto the frost. Across the fields, a shepherd turns in his blanket, half hearing the distant bleat of a sheep. Even the animals seem to live by that rhythm. Sleep, stir, sleep again. There are stories of people seeing strange things in those hours too. Not quite dreams, not quite reality. Witches said to walk between first and second sleep. Angels appearing in visions. Scholars scribbling by candlelight, claiming that midnight brought inspiration. The boundary between worlds was thinner then, or maybe it still is. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of our sleeplessness today is just an echo of that same pulse, the body remembering what the mind has forgotten. Let me tell you of one old man, mentioned in a 16th century diary, who lived in the countryside of France. He would wake after his first sleep and tend to his garden by moonlight, pruning herbs and muttering small rhymes to each plant. When asked why, he said, "The moon is kind to leaves at this hour. Maybe that's superstition. Or maybe he knew something we've lost." Every part of that life moved to the rhythm of nature. The dark wasn't something to fear. It was simply half of life. Fire was their light, and sleep came in waves as it wished. There were no clocks commanding, no buzzing reminders, no glowing rectangles counting the seconds. Just the quiet trust that one's body knew when to rest and when to rise. As the small hours wore on, fatigue would creep back softly. The eyes would blur, the head would dip, and soon the second sleep began. They called it the morning sleep, though it still belonged to the night. This was the deeper, dreamier half, full of images so vivid that people swore they held messages. In one 15th century letter, a woman writes to her sister, "I dreamed between my sleeps that our mother smiled at me and my pain was gone, and so it was when I woke." She believed dreams of the second sleep carried healing or truth. Maybe that's why those hours feel different even now. Why the sleep after 3 a.m. sometimes feels heavier, stranger, more filled with color. The dawn comes slowly in this world. A rooster stirs. Smoke rises from chimneys. You open your eyes to the pale light, not startled, not groggy. You've already rested twice in 2 gentle halves, and your body feels whole. The day begins without rush, without alarms. Wouldn't that be something, to live by such rhythm again? To let the dark have its intermission, to listen to silence as a friend. Maybe tonight, if you wake at an odd hour, you'll remember this. That once upon a time it was normal to do so. You might even whisper, "Ah, my first sleep is done," and smile softly before letting the second one find you. And as we leave this world of flickering candles and moonlit hours, let your thoughts wander gently toward what people did during those wakeful midnights. The laughter, the confessions, the quiet work and soft prayers that filled the space between dreams. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it, that middle-of-the-night hush that hums between the world's heartbeats. The kind of silence so deep you can hear the wood of the house sigh as it cools. This is where we find ourselves now, between first and second sleep, the lost hours of the medieval night. The time is roughly midnight, perhaps a little past. In the candlelit cottages and narrow rooms of stone, people stir gently. They are not waking to alarms, nor because of worry. They are simply following a rhythm older than language. Imagine it. The air smells faintly of smoke and wool. Outside, frost has formed silver lace on the window. The moon hangs high, wide and white. You open your eyes, not sharply, not reluctantly, but like a leaf turning toward the light. The first sleep is complete, your body rested, your mind strangely alert. You sit up. The straw mattress shifts beneath you. Beside the fire, a low pot still holds warmth from the evening stew. You reach for it, maybe add a splash of ale and stir. It tastes slightly sour but rich, comfort in liquid form. Maybe you tear a crust of bread, dip it in, and chew slowly, watching the smoke curl toward the rafters. This was a normal sight in those centuries. People gently moving about their rooms in the middle of the night. The dim fire glowing, a few murmured voices, the creak of a wooden floorboard. Some families shared stories then, quiet tales meant only for the dark. Others whispered prayers, soft and unhurried. And in cities where the narrow lanes carried sound like rivers, you might hear faint laughter from a tavern still awake, or the hollow steps of a night watchman with his lantern swinging like a slow heartbeat. There was something communal about those hours. Today, waking at midnight feels lonely. Back then, it was a shared rhythm. Almost everyone experienced it. And in that strange middle space, people talked more intimately than at any other time. Think of a husband and wife, lying side by side under thick wool blankets. They've slept, they've dreamed, and now they talk. Not about crops or chores, but about small things. The neighbor's new cow, a song remembered from childhood, a dream they had just before waking. These little moments knit their lives together. One historian called it the quiet conversation of the divided night. And there's a warmth to that image, isn't there? The idea that the most honest talks might happen not in daylight, but between two halves of sleep. In some households, children would wake too, their sleepy eyes blinking in the half-light. Mothers would hum to them soft lullabies from older generations. "Sleep again, my little one," they'd whisper. "The stars still watch." Sometimes people took this hour to write, if they could write at all. Letters, notes, even poetry. The scholar Roger Akirch, who studied this phenomenon, found countless references in diaries. "I wrote by the light of my candle between sleeps." Imagine that faint scratch of quill on parchment. Words born in the space between dreams. Of course, not all activity was so peaceful. Some people used this time for, shall we say, affection. Old medical texts even recommended it, claiming the body was most fertile and the mind most relaxed after the first sleep. So, you see, romance had its own midnight window too. But for most, it was simpler. They prayed. They thought. They stared into the dim red fire, letting their minds wander.
No heri, no guilt.
Just being. One 15th century monk described it beautifully. The first sleep takes the body, but the second takes the soul. And in between, he said, the mind floats like a candle on water. Picture yourself now in one of those small stone homes. You're sitting near the hearth, wrapped in a wool cloak. The candle beside you burns with a trembling flame, its light soft and amber. Outside, the world is motionless except for the low wind threading through the trees. Somewhere, a rooster crows too early, then falls silent again. You glance toward the wooden shelf. A few clay bowls, a jug of ale, maybe some dried apples or nuts. You pick one up, feel its wrinkled skin between your fingers and bite. It's sweet, chewy, slightly smoky from the hearth's heat. For a moment, it's as if time itself has slowed down to your chewing. It's easy to see how this rhythm made sense in their lives. They rose with the sun, worked hard through the day, and darkness came early. Sleeping twice allowed them to stretch rest across those long winter nights. And their bodies followed willingly. Studies today suggest that when people are placed in natural darkness for weeks, their sleep patterns revert to this two-phase system, proof that it lies within us still. There's a certain poetry in that, as though humanity has two heartbeats, one for the day and one for the night. You might be wondering, what did they dream about? During the first sleep, dreams were said to be of the body, reflections of hunger, fatigue, or desire. During the second, they were of the spirit. Many believed that the dreams between sleeps carried messages, warnings, comforts, prophecies. A woman might wake and tell her husband, "I saw the sea in my dream." He'd nod, light the candle, and together they'd discuss its meaning before lying back down. No dream dictionaries, no therapy, just shared wonder. Imagine if we treated our own waking hours that way, not as interruptions but as invitations. Maybe that's what the medieval night teaches us. Not every pause is a problem. Some are simply spaces to breathe. Now the hours stretch onward. You finish your small meal, set the bowl aside, and move closer to the warmth. The logs shift with a sigh, sending up sparks like tiny orange stars. You lie back again, feeling the soft pull of drowsiness returning. The second sleep is calling, deeper and longer than the first. Your mind begins to fade, still half aware of the fire's faint glow. Outside, the first hints of dawn hide behind the hills. The night will soon surrender to morning. And as your eyes close, you carry with you that thought, that once upon a time, the middle of the night was not a problem to fix, but a gift to enjoy. Let that idea settle like warm light on your thoughts. The next time you wake before dawn, remember, you are not broken. You are simply ancient. Now, as we drift from this moonlit cottage, let's step softly into the next place the night takes us. Into the warmth of community, where families, monks, and travelers shared stories and secrets around the embers of their hearths. There's something about the sound of crackling firewood that seems to carry memory. Isn't there? Each pop feels like a heartbeat from another century. And in that quiet, the mind drifts through time with ease. So let's drift a little further. The cottage we left behind sits on the edge of a small village, and if you step outside, bare feet on cool dirt, you'll see faint curls of smoke rising from other chimneys. The entire village is half awake, half dreaming. A candle flickers here, a low murmur there. It's as if the night itself is breathing. In one house, an old woman stirs porridge for her grandchild who woke hungry. The scent of oats and honey mingles with the tang of burning peat. She hums softly. No tune you'd recognize, just a melody that sounds like warmth itself. In another house, a young man pulls on his cloak and slips outside to meet his sweetheart by the well. Their whispers hang in the frosty air, words you could almost see if you looked closely enough. A little further down, the blacksmith's forge glows faintly. He's been awake since the end of his first sleep, shaping small tools while the world rests. The rhythmic tap of his hammer is muffled, careful not to wake the neighbors. It's strange to imagine, but this was productivity before coffee, quiet, deliberate, done by candlelight and instinct. There's something profoundly peaceful about this kind of night.
No Heri.
No light pollution, only the moon, the stars, and the slow pulse of life. Even the animals play their part. The low moo of a cow, the shifting of hooves, the faraway howl of a wolf on the hills. Nature's own lullaby. Inside, near the hearth, a family sits together. The children are half asleep, their eyes glossy from the warmth. The father tells a story, a small tale about the time he saw a spirit in the woods, though he says it with a grin, not fear. The mother rolls her eyes softly, but she's smiling too. These hours between sleeps often became story hours, the earliest bedtime tales. In fact, many historians think this was where oral storytelling thrived, the in-between time, when people's minds were open and dreamy, ready for myth. Think about that. Perhaps the fairy tales we know today, the ones about forest witches, talking animals and wandering ghosts, were born in the glow of those half-lit nights, spoken softly between first and second sleep, when children's eyelids fluttered but refused to close just yet. The texture of life then was slower, more textured. Every sound carried meaning. Every silence felt alive. If you were a traveler resting at an inn, you'd hear snoring from the common room, the soft shuffle of someone rising for a drink, the muted bark of a dog outside, and the innkeeper, of course, always awake in that middle time, pouring ale for a lone rider or checking the stables. In the city, the picture changes. The watchmen walk the cobbled streets, cloaks drawn tight, lamps swinging. They call out the hour, 1 o'clock and all's well, and sometimes they pause to listen for answers. A baker shouts back from his shop, "Aye, all's well." The rhythm of those calls threads through the dark like a lullaby, a kind of reassurance that even in the silence, someone is watching. There's something strangely comforting in that, isn't there? The idea that in a sleeping world, small pockets of wakefulness keep the night balanced. And then, there were letters. Oh, those secret midnight letters. The ones written by lovers or dreamers when the world was too still to judge. They'd light a candle stub, dip the quill in ink, and let their thoughts pour out. Slowly, deliberately, without distraction. A letter written at midnight feels different. It carries the heartbeat of that quiet. Many were never sent. They were found later, pressed between pages or burned, or tucked in drawers. But even unseen, they were real. The written proof that someone once sat awake and thought deeply under the moon. A curious thing, too. People used to believe that the hours between sleeps were good for healing. Physicians in the 14th century claimed the body restores its humors best after the first sleep. They even advised drinking warm milk with herbs, valerian, chamomile, or sometimes cinnamon, before returning to bed. If you think about it, that's not so far from the tea we drink today for calm. Our modern rituals are just echoes of their ancient wisdom. The night stretches on. You can see frost forming on the window pane, tracing delicate veins like silver roots. A mouse scurries near the hearth, pausing to nibble on a forgotten crumb. Somewhere, a dog sighs and rolls over, paws twitching as it dreams of chasing something across a meadow. The fire hums, and you can almost feel the glow on your face. Now picture yourself sitting there, wrapped in a blanket, the quiet pressing around you like soft wool. You'd think about small things, how your body feels lighter in the dark, how your mind wanders where it never goes in daylight. You'd wonder if the moon remembers everyone who's ever stared at it this way, across all the centuries. Between first and second sleep, there's no rush to do anything. You simply exist. Maybe you say a prayer, not out of duty but gratitude. Maybe you hum to yourself, or trace circles on the blanket, feeling how time seems to melt away. And when you finally lie back, your body ready for that second descent, you feel a peace deeper than tiredness. The fire fades to embers, the world grows still, and sleep returns not as a demand, but as an invitation. The second sleep was often the richer one, the dream-filled slumber that carried people until dawn. And they would wake rested, not because they slept longer, but because they had lived through the night instead of fighting it. It makes me wonder what would happen if we tried that again, if we let the dark belong to us instead of our devices, if we stopped treating wakefulness as failure and started treating it as the oldest part of our humanity. Because maybe, just maybe, when you wake at 3 in the morning, it isn't the world calling you back. It's your ancestors, whispering through your blood, it's time for the watch. So the next time that happens, don't fight it. Light a small lamp in your mind, breathe deeply, and let the silence hold you. You are not alone in the dark. You are part of an ancient pattern that once stretched from one continent to another, one candle to the next. And as you drift again into that deep second sleep, remember that this quiet, this peace, this pause, is the oldest lullaby in the world. Now, let's leave the quiet homes and step into a place where those midnight hours weren't just restful, but filled with stories and faith, where monks chanted in cold stone halls, and villagers whispered secrets they'd never dare share by day.